What's up, fellow YouTubers? Welcome back to the greenhouse. I want to talk a little bit about companion plants for orchids today. So this video will not really dwell on too much about orchids, but just the companion plants that I grow. So I have some vine plants here. This one is a type of ivy, and these are mostly grown indoors. They're not the type of ivy that are hardy and are grown outdoors. And I have the purple wandering Jew. This one's really great and they're really easy to take care of. So these are super easy to grow. I grow them the way that I do my orchids. I hang them up though, so they get pretty strong light. And you can see that the Swiss cheese, at the end it gets, or near the roots, the leaves are a lot bigger, and then they get smaller and smaller as they grow out. And this one is really long. You can see that this one has also grown to be really long as well. And for me, I find that the easiest way to grow these guys is to give it a trim all the time. So my wandering Jew over here was not doing spectacular for a while. So what happened was it grew to be too long, and then the leaves over there, the older ones, just started to die off and it just looked very drabby. And then the leaves down here, the newer leaves, didn't look good either because the nutrients just had to travel such a far distance to go down to the newer leaves. So what I did was I pulled all of the plants out. So the wandering Jew, the ivy, and the Swiss cheese, I pulled everything out. So I basically just unpotted the entire thing, cut off the little tips right here, so about 4 inches in I would cut it, and then I would pull off one of the leaves, stick it back into the ground, and within 1 month it just exploded into this wonderful plant, and it's doing really well. I also did a little snippet of these Christmas cactus that I've been growing, and these are also inside the greenhouse. They're my companion plants to the orchids. And here are the plumerias. I have featured these in my previous greenhouse update. So far they have not bloomed, unfortunately, and you can see that some of the leaves are starting to drop because it's cold. So I'll talk about a little bit about them as well. And back here I have this corn silk plant, which was a rescue, and it did well for the first year I rescued it, but I think it stalled. Like, there are still some green growths on it, but it's really not doing anything, and I think it's not going to do anything in the future. It might just be on its deathbed, unfortunately. And this huge, gigantic plant back here is a fern. See how big this one is? This is almost as big as the corn silk. So this one I got at Lowe's, and it was seriously like in a 2-inch pot. And it was like $3 or something, and you can see that it's definitely not not small anymore. This has to be my biggest success of all. And back here I have some bromeliads. So I did videos on my bromeliads in the past, but it's been quite a while. And then up here are some more bromeliads. So this one is so huge that it's tipped over on its side because there's just no space. And it blooms. That is the bloom right there. It's doing awesome. All of my bromeliads, are doing really wonderful. And it's really humid inside the greenhouse, which is why I have like this haze over my lens right now. I also have other ivies up here, and Peperomia. This is a cutting that I got from my coworker. And it's grown quite a bit, so you can see that It's huge, and this plant was, or the cutting came from a plant that was more than 20 years old, and it wasn't doing that well because it wasn't repotted. And so I encouraged my coworker to repot it and just cut off the tips and then replant them. And you can see that one of the cuttings have fully grown into this beautiful, beautiful plant. I also grow the rat-tail cactus with my orchids, and these are just wonderful combination or companions to the orchids. They have purple flowers, and I only got it to bloom once because I got it as a cutting, and I guess it just took a while to grow. And I think what I need to do is divide it into its own separate pot, because right now it's sharing a pot or a hanging basket with a succulent. The Spanish moss is doing quite wonderful, and sometimes with the Spanish moss, when the older parts die off, you just kind of have to remove them. They get really bushy and long as they grow. And this one was kind of like a rescue, so I bought it, but it wasn't doing that well. So I put it on top of my orchid. So as with the other vine plants, the Peperomia also needs to be pretty much unpotted and then pull out all the old parts. So basically, like, I would pull up the entire plant and get rid of this entire part right here and just keep the newer tips and then plant those tips back into the pot. And I do that every year, so my plant will get a lot more luscious and vibrant, and it gets a lot bushier. But if you just keep them in the same pot and you don't give them sort of like a repropagation, they will just keep on growing longer and longer, and they won't look as good as before because they'll get kind of skinny and then the leaves get a lot smaller. So that's just my way of growing them. It's just kind of to restart from scratch every year, so then they look nice, and they're so easy to propagate that you don't really have to have anything special. You just cut off like a little bit of it, maybe about 4 inches at the tip. Keep the ones that are at the tip because the new growths tend to root a lot faster than the old ones. And then I have my bromeliads, or my air plants, right here, and these guys, this one is potted and some of my bromeliads are potted. My air plants are not. But these guys like to have water like in their crown, and I just hose them off. They're blooming right now. They're doing really great. So these guys are super easy to grow, the bromeliads and the air plants. I find that they don't need a lot of care except for bright light. I also grow some exotic succulents and cactus. So this is the Sapellia from Mouse Lily on the right, and I showed this one in some of my other videos where it just flowers. This is a huge flower and it stinks really badly. I also have some herbs right here. This is the culantro, not the cilantro, but this one's doing really well. I watered it like 2 days ago, and then it just, the water is still on there, so I need to turn on the fan so it can evaporate. These guys like to be semi-moist but not completely wet, and so I actually don't have holes on the bottom of the pot, but I just have holes on the side about 1/2 inch or 1 inch upwards, so then it can hold a little bit of water. And in the winter I water about once a week. I also have some air plants here that doesn't look so good. Yeah, this one was, it traveled pretty far to come to me. And then I got these ones from like a branch, but I don't really know if they're going to survive or not because they're usually like up in the mountains. So this weather might not be so good for them. And then I have, this is an herb plant. And these are used in cuisine, like Asian cuisine and stuff. And the leaves have a very intense smell to them. I also grow these with my orchids because they take exactly the same care. They need a little bit of higher humidity as does the cilantro. I have to say it cilantro just so like it doesn't get confused with cilantro. And then I just got this one as a cutting. This is the Epiphyllum German Empress, I believe. So I think this one's gonna rue. I just stuck it right into the ground with a mix of sand and soil and osmoco is how you say it, so the fertilizer. So actually this one right here was a suggestion from a viewer, and I was able to get my hands on this one online because it's kind of hard to get. So this one will have huge flowers as well. I also grow some epiphyllums with my orchids, but here's the thing that I found. The ones that are on the floor, they don't get as much light and they don't do that well. So you can see that the older leaves that are in the ground look a lot better because they had more light, and then the newer leaves that are coming out are super skinny. And I'm trying to find space for them like on the top shelf, but right now I just don't have a lot of space. I want to get rid of some plants. Trying to find room for these because they need a lot more light, and you can see that these leaves right here are just super skinny, whereas these older leaves are really big because they got more light at some point. So I did move some of them up on that top shelf, and they're doing really awesome up there. They just do so much better when they're in a brighter environment. And these are sitting with my cymbidiums, which you would think that the epiphyllums don't like that much bright light, but they totally dig it. They're doing awesome. Okay, so right now my pitcher plants don't look as good as they're supposed to, but I grow these with my vandas and my higher light orchids like hanging up on top. And I actually put them in hanging baskets because the pitchers were growing downwards. And right now it's getting cold, so these guys, like all the pitchers are dying off. But I still have some really neat pitchers back there. So I think I will be doing a video on just how to clean up the pitchers and stuff. And also what I use to fertilize them. So that'll be like a separate video. But for now, I just want to show you guys the pitcher plants. So I have 2 of those, and this one is not looking too shabby. So this one, for whatever reason, is like growing on one side. It's weird. Actually, it looks like this one is also growing upwards on the other side, so that's kind of weird too. One side is growing upwards and the other side is growing downwards. And I really need to clean up the pitchers, get rid of it, and so forth. But I want to do like a video to show you guys how to do that. And in the spring, they make a lot more pitchers, but in the fall, they tend to all die off. And it's kind of a dreary sight to see, especially now when they all look like they're about to die off. So they're really dry. This is an Easter cactus that I just pulled out, and it's looking a little bit limpy and sad. So sad and limpy. The reason why it's looking really limpy is because it was hidden in the back shelf and it wasn't getting enough attention. Oh gosh, okay, that made me laugh.